Yes are the very blueprint of an English prog rock band. They were formed in 1968 in the south of England. They had a classic lineup, which was John Anderson on vocals, Rick Wakeman on keyboards, Steve Howe on guitar, and Chris Squire on bass, and either Bill Bruford or Alan White on drums, depending on what your taste is. They have released a fair number of albums. They've had more than their fair share of double albums released. There's been quite a bit of confusion over membership, with people coming and going quite a bit, a higher than normal turnover of members. There's at times been confusion of the name and confusion over their existence. The most extreme band I've come across for these things, but they're pretty far gone. So, for example, one of their albums which charted really well in the 80s, called 90125, was actually going to be released under the name Cinema. They were a group of people who put themselves together especially to make this album, and it wasn't until they got quite a long way through the process that they decided to switch tactic, because they had most of the ex-members of Yes who had ceased to be as a band at that point, and decided to call themselves Yes. Also, there was another album that was released that wasn't released under the album Yes, but basically were Yes. It was released under the name Anderson, Bruford, Wakeman, Howe. Lots of confusion. Rick Wakeman, for example, has done 5 different stints with the band. One of my favourite things about them at the moment is that their current lead singer is a guy called John Davison, who early in his singing career was in a Yes tribute band, and he sounded so much like the classic Yes singer John Anderson that when they needed a new singer a few years ago, they approached John Davison, and he is now their permanent lead singer. They're also known for having most of their album covers designed by a guy called Roger Dean, who does fantasy art. Hi, my name's Dan. This is obviously a Yes album. I have reviewed this album before, so very quick history. I've had 3 different kind of periods of doing reviews. So the first period of doing reviews was doing prog rock albums, and I was just posting my reviews on Facebook for my Facebook friends. The second was doing more general releases, and that was on a blog. And now, obviously, I'm doing video reviews of the 3,000 greatest albums of all time. And so I reviewed it when I was doing prog rock albums. So that was a few years ago now. And what I haven't done is just trot out that review again. I've had a really good listen, and my opinion has changed a bit since the previous one. So we've got a pretty classic Yes lineup here. We've got John Anderson, we've got Howe, Squire, Wakeman, and Alan White on drums, and I believe it was his first album for the band. And it's a double album, and there are 4 tracks, and each track is one side of the album, or one side of one LP on the album. And so they're kind of 20 odd minutes long generally about. It's a concept album. Apparently it's based on 4 bodies of Hindu texts, which I wouldn't have been able to identify myself personally, but Wikipedia is great. My favourite story about the album is that John Anderson, who's the singer, wanted to record at night in a forest with generators that were buried so that you didn't hear the sound from it. They basically told him he was flying a flag up the wrong tree there. And instead, eventually it was recorded in London, but they decorated the studio as a farmyard. Now, whether that was just to take the mickey out of John Anderson, I have no idea. Let's get into the description. It's definitely prog rock. So if prog rock was something where you kind of, to identify it, you had various aspects that you could have, and you gave each one points for its progness, this would be high on the list, and it got a high prog score. It's got complex, long multi-part tracks. It's got odd times and harmonies. It's not using classic song structures. It goes bit, bit, bit. It sometimes comes back to the stuff that it's done before, uses themes that go through, a bit like classical music does. And it uses some odd instruments, there's some classical instruments. There's a really nice bit of solo classical guitar that comes in one of the tracks at various times. And generally, like all Yes that I've come across so far, it's got this kind of high and tinkly feel to it. So even the bass is quite toppy, and it's kind of a crunchy, toppy bass, which works quite well in context. I always feel it's a little bit of a shame that they haven't got a bit more of the bottom end, because they could have got some, more depth to the sound at times. But you listen through a decent system and it sounds quite good. John Anderson's voice is obviously high as well. So as always, my impression of Yes is that it's high in the tone range. It's well done. I would say that track 3, which is called The Ancient, is my favourite because it's the most unusual and the most varied. The others are fairly kind of, classic Yes stuff. If you don't know what that means, you're going to have a listen. John Anderson's voice is undoubtedly good. He's spot on the notes and is got some good, reasonable expression. It's a bit soulless at times, maybe. There's lots of vocal harmonies going on that's very nice. The lyrics are generally about how nice the universe is, and it's a very kind of, it's pre the New Age movement, but it's kind of definitely proto-New Age in that sense, somewhere lying between New Age and hippie. So it kind of flows over you, the words. There is this kind of relentless positivity to it, but again, this is a thing that's part of the package with Yes. And I guess if your band name is Yes, the temptation to be positive is quite high. So compared with the first time I reviewed it, I've actually liked it more. I've really quite enjoyed listening to this album. So I wouldn't say I know it well, but it's definitely a grower. I'm definitely remembering things from a few years ago. So that's, something that's definitely in its favour. I also wonder if maybe I've recalibrated my scoring for prog rock albums, because at that point I was listening to so much prog that, when it's surrounded by all the rest, kind of maybe, yeah, it's all right. Whereas now it's kind of against so much non-prog, and I do love my prog. So this has got a reasonably high score from me. So I do like it. I'd love to know what you think. I know there are some people who absolutely hate progressive rock. If you want to have a vent, go for it. Just, let's get conversations going. That's it from me for now.